And go. Okay, so good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to the Software Consultants Year-End Preparation webinar. Today we're going to talk about 1099s. So just a few housekeeping items. We are recording today's demonstration and we'll forward it to those who registered but were not able to make it to today's webinar. Because we are recording, we'll keep everybody on mute during the presentation. There will not be a questions and answers section to today's webinar, as we're trying to keep things under 30 minutes to respect everybody's time. If you do have questions, contact information will be provided at the end of our webinar. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started. So this is our agenda for today. And first we'll do introductions. All of you met me last time, whoever attended, and everybody knows Dion, but just to tell you guys that, I'm Misty Palick. I'm a seasoned certified Sage 100 contractor implementation specialist, and I've used Sage 100 Contractor for about 18 years in total, and I'm very passionate about helping people, so I really enjoy this product. So the learning objectives for today are ways to scrub your vendor records, so 1099s are easy. Did you know that you can even store your vendor W-9s right into the system? Do you have to use Atrix to process your 1099s? Can you print your own 1099s out of the system instead of using Atrix? And where does 100 Contractor store 1099 balances? Those are our learning objectives today. And then, of course, we'll give you our contact information, and there will also be a schedule at the end of this presentation for future webinars coming up. So this slide was so fun to put together because I know you're all with me. I know that this has been one crazy year, and I feel like sharing this story with you because it's just so funny. So I'm sure by now everybody has heard the term dumpster fire, but my husband is a college professor, and he came home back in mid-March, when class was still in session, and he said, all the kids, meaning his students, are saying the word of the year is going to be dumpster fire. And I thought, well, it's kind of like hot mess. So dumpster fire, hot mess, there's sort of an analogy there. But I actually looked up to see if there was a definition, and the Urban Dictionary describes dumpster fire as a noun, which is so hilarious to me. And it talks about it's a complete disaster or something very difficult that nobody wants to deal with. So I know that we're all on the same page, that there's been a lot of that this year. And it's probably going to, unfortunately, get a little worse before it gets better. But, there's always a silver lining to the cloud. And I think that with Sage 100 Contractor and the 1099s, our conversation today, will just help you be more prepared in 2021 so that you're not running around like a dumpster fire trying to put something out and it's not a complete disaster. So I thought this was funny, and I really think that, how Webster Dictionary always adds their terms to the dictionary at the beginning of the next year. I think this one is going to go in there. I'm sure it won't be combined as one word, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. But I bet you, if I was a betting person, which I am a little bit, I would bet you that that's going to go in Webster's Dictionary somehow. So I totally get it. You're not alone in this battle, but hopefully we can, give you some insight on how to make your life a little bit easier and not a dumpster fire. So let's get into it. So let's talk about why even do 1099s? What is a 1099? What are they used for? So according to Wikipedia, first of all, let me back up just a minute to say that as a disclaimer, I'm not a CPA nor a tax advisor of any kind. The information I'm providing you today simply came from my 24 years of experience as an accountant and with the help of good old Google. So you should always check with your tax preparer to make sure what is needed for your company specifically. And basically don't try this at home, kids, right? Always get some parental permissions before you go off on this rabbit hole. According to Wikipedia, the form 1099 is used to report payments to independent contractors, rental property income, income from interest and dividends, sales proceeds, and other miscellaneous income. So anyone that you pay more than $600 in a year that is not an employee, because that is handled by W-2s, they are not a corporation, so they're not incorporated, and or if they are an LLC, they should be given a 1099. And any company that you pay rent to should also receive a 1099. A lot of people miss out on that one, which, we'll get a little bit into that with there isn't a lot of regulation with the IRS for 1099s. Normally, and in the past, they've always been due by January 31st of the following year. So you've got about 30 days to get your stuff together and get them moving forward. And really what a 1099 does is you as a company are paying somebody more than $600, but you're not typically, unless they're an employee, withholding taxes. So the IRS always wants their money. Someone's always paying that tax. So what the 1099 does is reports to the IRS that you paid somebody or a company $600, more than $600. And as soon as you did that, you reported to the IRS that you paid this company or person $600, which means that the IRS needs to go to that person and collect the taxes on that $600 or however much it is. So really the 1099 is notifying the IRS that you paid somebody more than $600. And why is it not regulated? So it's not tightly regulated. You know, there's really no great reconciliation system. I mean, can you imagine trying to reconcile every single company in the United States to go, okay, so this company is reporting a 1099 to 500 vendors, and we need to go to those 500 vendors and try to collect our tax. So it's kind of a management nightmare or a dumpster fire. How about that? So really what is happening is, you know, it's not really tightly regulated because they can't. And they have no way of knowing what you are paying your vendors. See, the IRS, you know, unless you're being audited, has no access really to your financial records to know that you paid somebody more than $600 a year. That doesn't mean that you should just ignore the 1099s. It's kind of an honor system and you should be doing them, you know, but they're not tightly regulated by the IRS because they just can't. It's just too big of an animal for them to maintain. So some changes to talk about in 2020. This is a brand new thing, which I actually talked to my friend who is a CPA the other day, and she mentioned to me that, you know, the changes for the 1099, they talk about bringing back this form that they had at some point, but in both her and my experience of 25 years, we've never heard of this form that they're bringing back, okay? And I know you can all see me do my air quotes over here. So the most significant change to the Form 1099 in 2020 is the breakout of non-employee compensation, or we call that NEC, from box 7 of the form of 1099 miscellaneous. So traditionally, all of the 1099s are put on a form called 1099 miscellaneous. However, and it was just a matter, just like a W-2, you put the wages or however much you paid that vendor in each specific box. So the IRS has changed it this year for 2020, meaning that there is a brand new form. They're calling it a reinstatement of a form, but it's a brand new form of a 1099-NEC. So what it does is allows, you know, for those company or those non-employees that you paid more than $600 a year, it allows for a later date for your 1099s to be submitted. So the traditional, you know, the LLCs and everybody else is done by January 31st, but this non-employee compensation or attorneys isn't due until March 31st. So you've got a little bit of playtime in there, which is great because sometimes it's hard to collect all the information that you need from your contractors, meaning your not subcontractor labor, but like contractor labor, people that you just kind of hire on the side. So just remember that somebody's always paying the tax, whether it be sales tax or income tax, somebody's always paying the tax, right? There's not very many things that are truly tax exempt in this world anymore. I think it's very unfortunate, but it's kind of the truth. So that's kind of, you know, what are 1099 or why even do them? You know, if they're not regulated, why do them? You know, that you really should. It is the honor system and you should respect that. Okay, so in our 2020 theme of dumpster fire, I thought this was really funny. But how do you clean up your vendors? What does that even mean? Do you just spray them down with disinfectant? Because wow, if we could do that, that would be fantastic. I would really enjoy just spraying them down and moving on, right? Just like you do with the bathroom door or the faucet or anything else. Let's just spray them down. But really what it means is, you know, if you are collecting W-9s from your vendors, there's lots of ways inside of Sage 100 Contractor to clean your vendor files. And that means, so if you're preparing 1099s through Sage or any other means, you'll want to collect the W-9 on every vendor, no matter what, just as a policy. Just say, if you're going to work with my company, then we need to collect a W-9 on you. It's a really simple form that they have to fill out. Sometimes there's questions with sole proprietors and they need a little bit of guidance to help them fill it out because they have to use their social security number, and then you have to ensure that you're not going to, abuse their social security number. So, that it's secure in your environment. Some important ways to clean your vendors in Sage 100 Contractor, because you can't just spray them with disinfectant, is you do this in the 4.4 screen, so the vendors window, which we'll kind of go in there and talk a little bit about that. And actually, we can do that right now. We can pull up our vendor screen. So it's this lovely screen here. And, there's a lot of options in here for everything to do with a vendor. This is a vendor table. But some of the important ways in Sage 100 Contractor to clean up your vendors is making sure that the legal name, which is the vendor name, the top line right here, this has to be what is going to print not only on paycheck or checks to this vendor, but also on the 1099s and any other communication that you're going to have with them. This needs to be their legal name according to their W-9. Another important thing is if this vendor is a sole proprietor, so if this is a sole proprietor, then this should be a social security number for their federal ID number. Normally, that's how it is. Also, something important to remember for 1099s is this: if they're a sole proprietor, they also need an owner listed on their vendor record so that Sage can process that information. Making sure that you select the right type on your 1099 type is very important also. Don't just let the system call it undetermined, but actually, and you can take it right from their W-9 because that's important, and you can select which 1099 type there is. Which will be really interesting is, when you're processing the 1099s this year, again, because they're not regulated, I'm not sure that Sage has done a software update to where it can capacitate that 1099 non-employee compensation form. I don't really think that exists. So what they might do when you're processing these inside of Sage, if you are using Sage, is that you'll have to put that information over in box 7 manually. Just an FYI, keep an eye out for that. But, I don't think the IRS is going to come back to you and slap your hand if you turn in the wrong form. So it's going to take a while for that to take effect is what my opinion is. So, and then another important thing is to make sure that the address matches and is accurate based on their W-9 too. So all this information, you don't have to Google it. You don't have to make it up. You just have the vendor fill out a W-9. And then you can get all that information off of them. So the next thing to talk about is, what is a W-9? I know most of us have probably heard of that, but it's a good idea to cover it anyways. So again, it's a great way to clean up your vendors and have everything you need for each vendor. So a W-9, according to the IRS, is a tax form used to confirm a person's name, address, tax identification number for employment or other income generating purposes. And you can fill it out right online. And also, it is the confirmation that can be requested for either an individual defined as a U.S. citizen or a person defined as a resident alien. It's also known as a request for taxpayer identification number and certification form. So you've probably heard a few of those terms, but I've always called it a W-9. And it's really important that you do collect these. And the reason is because if, say for instance, you paid a vendor $600, or more than $600, and you issued them a 1099, and you did not have their correct address or their correct company name, just so in Sage 100 Contractor, and you're processing your 1099s out of there, if the IRS cannot contact that company to collect income tax or reconcile that they're, putting that money on their own personal income tax return, then you're going to get notification as your company, because you're the one that sent it out. You're going to get notification that something was submitted incorrectly, and you're going to have to fix it. And eventually, the IRS could come back to you and say you have to pay the income tax on that money that you submitted to that vendor because they are not paying the income tax. Because if you remember, someone's always paying the tax. That's just how it is. Somebody's always paying the tax. Another important thing to remember in Sage 100 Contractor is the paperclip icon. And that paperclip icon exists everywhere. So we can kind of go back to Sage 100 Contractor and look at that little paperclip. And this is just a great place to store your documents. And you have to keep in mind, though, when you're storing a document, it's not just free space. So wherever you're hosting your Sage 100 Contractor database, is it on a server? Is it on a pseudo server locally that you've got, just a computer under your desk that's kind of acting as a server? Are you a lone ranger and you just have it on your laptop? I've seen all sorts of scenarios there. But realize that it's not free space, and your repository, your document repository, exists inside of your Sage database. So this paperclip is everywhere. It's in every single screen that is available in Sage, almost every single screen. So when you want to attach something, like if you were trying to attach a W-9, I could easily browse out to a W-9, attach it here, save my vendor record, recall it. And, you can use that for just about anything that you wanted to. If you wanted to store subcontracts, certificates of insurance, anything you want to store in here, you certainly can. But just remember, it does, over time, take up space in your database. So then I can easily open that form, and this is just the W-9 that I downloaded from the IRS today. So then you could have that all completed and signed off by the vendor. And then it lives in Sage. And then you don't have to try to keep track of it in some weird folder somewhere or an email that you've got it one source of truth. You can just go to the vendor record and find what you need. So keep in mind that that paperclip does exist everywhere, but that it is, it's not free space, and you are adding space to your database. Just something to keep in mind there. So let's see here. Okay, so that's kind of W-9s. They're real handy, and you should really request them from every vendor that you work with, even if they're just your mom and she's helping you out with your accounting. You should really request a W-9, because you may pay her more than $600 if you're a nice person and a nice son or daughter. That you should pay your mom for helping you with your books, and then it makes processing 1099s all that much easier. Okay, so it's really important. Let's talk a little bit about Atrix. Atrix is a tax processing company. They've been around for a lot of years, and they are natively baked into Sage 100 Contractor. And what do I mean by that? So if you browse out to your Sage and you go to 541 federal tax forms or 542 state tax forms, Atrix is working in the background. So it's natively baked in. You don't have to go out to an external product. You don't have to go out to a website. You don't even have to sign up for Atrix if you're not going to have them process, meaning you're not going to have them print your 1099s and mail them for you. If you're going to do that yourself, then you don't even have to sign up for an Atrix account. But it does live inside a Sage 100 Contractor. So it is the processing company that helps your tax tables be up to date. So if you'll notice, if you've ever been in there, every single time I go in there, it's asking me to update my tax tables. So I click on the update and wait a few minutes. It has all the pages. Oh, we skipped ahead. I'm sorry. I got excited. So, it has all the different tax tables for the different states that it's pulling in, and it's calculating those, making sure everything is up to date. So if you are preparing your own 1099s, I think it's very cost effective to let Atrix file them for you. Because by the time you go to Office Max or Staples and you buy those forms, and you have the frustration of printers and making sure everything is lined up appropriately, and then you have to stuff the envelopes with the 1099s, and there ain't no way in God's green earth that I'm going to lick an envelope these days. So, you're going to have to deal with that, and then you have postage. For $1.99 per recipient, Atrix will do that for you. And I mean, you can't even buy a cup of coffee for $1.99 anymore. So I think it's really worth it. And they do a nice job. They have a, money back guarantee that everything is going to be fine. I've used them for years and years and years, to process not only my 1099s, but my W-2s for clients. And they just make your life so much easier. So, why not let the professionals take care of it for you? And again, you don't have to have an account with them. They do charge you an annual fee. I don't know the fees. I think it depends on your company size. So you would have to go out there to the Atrix and, sign up for an account if you're going to let them do your processing for you. But if you're not, then you can just use the tax processing inside of Sage 100 Contractor, and it's natively baked in. So something to keep in mind, it's very cost effective and it's super, super easy. Okay, let's talk about 1099 balances. So as you're entering accounts payable into Sage 100 Contractor, it is already tallying those dollars for you. So it's storing them inside a 1099 balances table. So every time I pay a vendor, every time I enter an AP invoice for a vendor and pay a vendor, then it is going to add to their 1099 balance. So if you're using the software as it was meant to be used, you don't even have to think about what the balances are. That's also one of the beauties of putting your or doing your processing your 1099s right through Sage 100 Contractor. You don't even have to think about it. The data is already there. You just have to process the form, basically. So it's really a great benefit. But so it stores it in a separate table. There's nothing that you need to do with it. It just does it automatically for you as you're entering AP. Now, if you came into Sage 100 Contractor mid-year, say you started in March instead of January of 2020, you need to go in here and if you are going to process your 1099s through Sage 100 Contractor, you need to go in here and update your 1099 balances per vendor. So you kind of do an adjustment. You can see here on the screen. You do an adjustment to that vendor to pull over from your legacy software. So say January through March, I paid Made Right Construction $1,000. Then I would come over here and March 1st, I would put in $1,000 to their 1099 balance startup adjustment so that I could process my 1099s through here. That is how you get those startup balances for your 1099s. That only has to do with if you're starting out mid-year within Sage 100 Contractor. For those companies that are new, you know, that information is how you get your startup balances in there. So again, that only has to do with if you're just starting out in Sage 100 Contractor and you're starting mid-year. So that's kind of 1099s in a nutshell. I know that was a lot of information, but again, we are trying to keep this, you know, under 30 minutes because everybody needs to get on with their Fridays, as I call them. Let's just talk about what's next. As you can see, Dion's contact information is here. Most of you obviously know Dion, so you can reach out to him if you have any questions. And if he has any questions and can't answer them, he'll reach out to me. But the next Lunch and Learn or webinar is going to be next Friday, and it's year-end preparation. So archiving your company data, which is really valuable and important, especially this time of year. It's a great time to reflect and think about, you know, how you want to package up your data and tie a little bow on it and give it to Santa, right? It's important. And so these are just kind of some dates. I think all of you have that information, so you could easily reach out to Dion if you don't. And again, this is Dion's contact information. And, you know, I kept it to about 25 minutes, so I am proud of myself. I want to I want to wish everybody some holiday joy and know that this next year is not going to be a dumpster fire. Okay, guys, we've got to get it together. This year is, I don't know. I'm not even counting my birthday this year. So it's going to be a better year next year, and cheers to the new one. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you, everybody.